The first scream came before the crash. Then came fire. On a freezing November night outside Chicago, rain hammered the highway as Marcus Red gripped the steering wheel with trembling hands. In the passenger seat sat his wife, Vanessa, quiet, elegant, her dark curls damp against her cheeks. In the back sat Chloe, the younger woman Marcus had been secretly seeing for nearly a year. Neither woman was supposed to be in the car together, but secrets had a way of exploding at the worst possible moment. "What do you mean she's pregnant?" Vanessa's voice cracked as tears filled her eyes. Marcus opened his mouth to answer, but headlights suddenly blinded the windshield. A truck jackknifed across the icy road. Everything happened in seconds. Metal screamed. Glass shattered. The SUV flipped twice before crashing into the guardrail upside down. Then came silence. For one horrifying moment, Marcus thought they were all dead, until Chloe screamed. Fire crawled beneath the engine. Gasoline leaked across the pavement. Marcus kicked open the cracked driver's door and stumbled out into the rain, coughing blood. His shoulder felt broken, but he ignored it. "Vanessa!" he shouted. She was trapped. Her legs were pinned beneath the dashboard. Smoke filled the cabin. In the back seat, Chloe cried hysterically. "Marcus, please help me!" He froze. Two women, only seconds. The flames spread faster. Vanessa looked directly at him through the broken glass. And despite everything, despite betrayal, despite heartbreak, her voice stayed calm. "Save her," she whispered. Marcus stared at her in disbelief. "What? She's carrying your child." The fire roared louder. "Vanessa, go!" That single scream shattered him. Marcus crawled through the back window, cut Chloe's seatbelt with trembling hands, and dragged her onto the wet highway just as the SUV exploded behind them. The blast threw him onto the pavement. People gathered. Sirens wailed in the distance, and Marcus watched the flames consume the woman who had loved him longer than anyone else ever had. Vanessa Red died before the ambulance arrived. The story spread everywhere for weeks. Successful businessman survives fiery crash. Mistress saved while wife dies. Social media was brutal, especially toward Vanessa. People called her weak, pathetic, a fool for staying with an unfaithful husband. But they didn't know the truth about her. They didn't know Vanessa spent years volunteering at shelters in South Chicago. They didn't know she secretly paid college tuition for struggling students. They didn't know she once bought winter coats for an entire elementary school after hearing children were walking to class in snow without jackets. Vanessa had lived quietly, loved quietly, and died quietly. Marcus buried her on a gray morning under heavy snow. Only 11 people attended. Afterward, he stood alone beside her grave for nearly 3 hours. He stopped answering calls after that. Stopped attending business meetings, stopped smiling. Even Chloe eventually left him 6 months later, after admitting she could never live with the guilt of surviving. "You looked at her while the car burned," Chloe whispered, before walking away forever. "Not me." Marcus lost almost everything after that. His company collapsed within a year. He sold his penthouse, sold his watches, sold the lake house Vanessa once dreamed of turning into a family retreat. By the second year, he lived alone in a small rented home in Cleveland, working quietly at an auto repair shop under a different name. Most people no longer recognized him, and honestly, he preferred it that way. Every night, he replayed the accident in his mind. Every single night. Then came the knock. It was just after midnight during a snowstorm. Marcus almost ignored it. The knocking came again. Slow, heavy. He opened the door carefully, and nearly stopped breathing. A little girl stood outside wearing a red coat too big for her tiny body. Maybe 6 years old. Snow covered her boots. Behind her stood an elderly woman holding an umbrella. The child looked up at Marcus with wide brown eyes. Eyes he knew. Eyes that looked exactly like Vanessa's. "Are you Marcus Reed?" the little girl asked softly. His throat tightened. "Yes." The elderly woman stepped forward carefully. "My name is Helen Brooks," she said. "I was Vanessa's lawyer." Marcus stared at her in confusion. "She left instructions," Helen continued. "Very specific ones. She told me if anything ever happened to her, I should wait exactly 2 years before finding you." Marcus felt cold all over. "What are you talking about?" Helen gently rested her hand on the little girl's shoulder. "This is Ava, the sea." Hild smiled nervously. Marcus looked confused. "I don't understand." Helen's eyes softened. Vanessa adopted her 3 months before the accident. Silence. Marcus stared at the little girl again. "She never told me She planned to surprise you on your anniversary, Helen said quietly. She'd been working on the paperwork for almost a year. Marcus suddenly couldn't breathe properly. Helen handed him a small envelope. His hands shook as he opened it. Inside was a letter written in Vanessa's handwriting. If you're reading this, then I'm gone, and if I know you, you're blaming yourself for everything. Marcus sank against the doorframe as tears blurred his vision. I know what happened between us hurt, but pain changes people. Sometimes it breaks them before they can fix themselves. I forgave you long before that night. Not because you deserved it, because I didn't want hate to be the last thing living inside me. Ava needs someone kind, not perfect, just kind. And despite your mistakes, I still believe that man exists inside you. The little girl stepped closer carefully. Miss Vanessa used to talk about you every day, she said softly. She said you made the best pancakes. Marcus broke completely. For the first time in 2 years, he cried without holding anything back. Not quiet tears, not controlled grief, real grief, the kind that shakes your entire soul. Ava wrapped her tiny arms around him while snow drifted around the porch. And in that moment, for the first time since the fire, Marcus felt warmth again. Not forgiveness, not redemption, just warmth, the kind Vanessa had spent her whole life giving to other people. Weeks later, neighbors began noticing changes. Marcus laughed again. Ava drew pictures on the repair shop walls. They made pancakes every Saturday morning, usually burned, always messy. At night, Marcus read bedtime stories using ridiculous character voices that made Ava giggle uncontrollably. One evening, Ava asked the question he feared most. Was Miss Vanessa your soulmate? Marcus looked toward the window quietly. Snow fell gently outside. Yes, he whispered. I just realized it too late. Ava slipped her small hand into his. She still picked you, the little girl said. And somehow that hurt even more. But this time the pain carried something else with it, something softer, something human, something that finally sounded a little like hope. The first thing Marcus noticed after that night was silence, not the peaceful kind, the heavy kind, the kind that follows you even when a child is laughing in the next room. Ava had stayed, not officially at first, just a few days while the lawyer sorted paperwork, but days turned into weeks, and Marcus never once asked her to leave. He didn't know how. Because every time he looked at her, he saw Vanessa, not in a haunting way. In a healing way he didn't fully understand yet. But something strange started happening. Ava wasn't just a reminder of Vanessa. She was different. Too observant for her age. Too quiet at times. And sometimes she would ask questions that made Marcus uneasy. Like she already knew things she shouldn't. One night, while Marcus was closing the auto shop, Ava sat on an old tire in the corner, drawing with crayons. Marcus? She asked suddenly. Yeah, kiddo? Why did Miss Chloe leave you? The wrench in his hand slipped. He slowly turned. That's a grown-up thing. Ava tilted her head. Was it because of the fire? Marcus froze. Nobody had told her about Chloe. Not in detail. Not like that. Who told you that? Ava shrugged. I heard Miss Helen talking on the phone. Marcus felt a cold tension crawl up his spine. Helen, Vanessa's lawyer. The woman who brought Ava into his life. That night, after Ava fell asleep on the small couch in the back room, Marcus found himself going through old boxes, Vanessa's things. He hadn't touched them in months. Inside one dusty envelope, he found something he didn't remember seeing before. A second letter, smaller, folded differently, no date. Just his name, Marcus. If you ever meet Ava, don't question why she feels familiar. Just protect her. That's all I ever wanted from you. He read it 3 times, then a 4th. His heart started beating faster. Why would Vanessa write that? How did she even know Ava would be in his life? The next morning, Marcus drove to Helen's office. He didn't call, didn't warn her. He just walked in. Helen looked surprised but not shocked, as if she had been waiting. You weren't supposed to come this soon, she said calmly. Marcus placed the letter on her desk. What is this? Helen studied it quietly. Then she sighed. You found the second one. Second on. Helen leaned back slowly. Vanessa left multiple instructions. Not everything was meant to be revealed at once. Marcus felt his stomach tighten. What are you hiding from me? For a long moment, Helen said nothing. Then she spoke carefully. Vanessa knew she was being watched. Marcus frowned. Watched by who? Helen hesitated. That's what she never told me. A silence stretched between them. The room suddenly felt colder. Then Helen opened a drawer and pulled out a file. Thick, old, worn at the edges. She slid it across the desk. Marcus opened it, and his entire world tilted again. Inside were photos, surveillance images of Vanessa meeting someone Marcus did not recognize. A man in a black coat, always blurred faces in the background, dates, times, locations, all before the accident. Marcus looked up sharply. What is this supposed to mean? Helen's voice dropped. It means the crash might not have been an accident. The words didn't land immediately. His brain refused to process them. Stop, Marcus whispered. Just stop, but Helen didn't. There's more. She pulled out one final document, an insurance report, and beneath it, a sealed note Vanessa had apparently requested be delivered only after 2 years. The same timeline. Marcus's hands trembled as he reached for it, but before he could open it, the office door creaked. Ava stood there, barefoot, holding her red coat. Her eyes locked directly onto the file, and she whispered something that made Marcus go completely still. I remember him. The room didn't move, but Marcus felt like the floor had dropped beneath him. Ava stood in the doorway, small and still, clutching her red coat like it was the only thing anchoring her to the world. I remember him, she repeated softly. Marcus's voice barely came out. Who do you remember? Ava stepped forward slowly, her eyes fixed on the file in Helen's hands. The man in the black coat. Helen went pale. Marcus turned sharply. Ava, you've never seen those pictures before. But Ava didn't look away. I saw him in my dreams, she whispered. The silence that followed was heavy enough to crush air. Helen closed the file immediately. This shouldn't be happening, she muttered. Marcus snapped his attention to her. What does that mean? Helen exhaled shakily. Vanessa suspected something. Like this could occur, but not this early. Marcus stepped closer, voice rising. Stop talking in riddles. Tell me what is going on. Helen hesitated for a long moment. Then she spoke like she was breaking a rule she had sworn to obey. After the accident, I ran an internal review for Vanessa's estate. Marcus's jaw tightened, and there were inconsistencies in the crash report. Ava suddenly spoke again, softer this time. The fire wasn't random. Both adults turned to her. Marcus crouched slightly to her level. What do you mean, sweetheart? Ava pressed her fingers against her temple like she was trying to hold something in place. The truck. It wasn't supposed to hit you. Marcus felt his chest tighten. Helen whispered, almost to herself, That's impossible. Ava looked up at Marcus now, eyes unusually focused. I heard them talking before it happened. Marcus froze. Who? Ava's voice dropped. Vanessa. And the man in the black coat. The room went completely still. Marcus slowly stood up. That's not possible, he said firmly. Vanessa never met him with you around. You were not. I wasn't born yet, Ava interrupted quietly. The words hit like a strike to the chest. Helen's face hardened. Marcus, listen to her carefully. But Marcus was already shaking his head. No, this is wrong. She's 6 years old. She couldn't have. Suddenly stepped closer and placed her small hand on Marcus's wrist, and then she said something that drained the color from his face. She told him she was going to disappear. Marcus went completely still. What did you just say? Ava's eyes softened. Vanessa told him she would make it look like she died. Helen dropped into her chair. Marcus stepped back, as if the words physically pushed him. No, he whispered. That's not Vanessa. She couldn't, but Ava's voice stayed steady. She did it to protect me. A sharp knock echoed from outside the office. All three of them froze. Helen's head snapped toward the door. Marcus instinctively moved in front of Ava. The knock came again. Slower, deliberate, Helen whispered. No one knows I'm here today. Marcus's heart began pounding. Ava suddenly looked toward the door and whispered something barely audible. He found us. The lights flickered. Once, twice. Then the door handle slowly began to turn. The door creaked open slowly. Not forced, not rushed. Deliberate, like whoever stood outside already knew they were going to be welcomed. Marcus instinctively pulled Ava behind him. Helen stood frozen, one hand still gripping the edge of her desk. And then he walked in. Tall, black coat. Same man from the files. Only this time his face was clear. Calm eyes. Controlled expression. A quiet confidence that didn't belong in a small legal office. I see you've started remembering, he said. Helen's voice broke first. How did you find us? The man didn't answer her. His eyes were on Ava. That child remembers more than she should, he said softly. Marcus stepped forward immediately. Stay away from her. The man finally looked at Marcus, and something subtle shifted in his expression. Recognition. You're Marcus Red. Marcus clenched his jaw. Who are you? A faint pause. Then my name is Adrian Keller. Helen went rigid. Marcus frowned. That name means nothing to me. It should, Adrian replied calmly. I was the investigator assigned to your crash. Silence hit the room again. Ava peeked from behind Marcus's arm. Her voice was quiet. He was there. Adrian's gaze shifted back to her. Yes, he admitted. I was. Marcus's voice sharpened. So you're saying you investigated the accident, and now you're showing up years later in person. Why? Adrian reached into his coat slowly. Marcus tensed. But instead of a weapon, he pulled out a sealed envelope. He placed it on Helen's desk. I wasn't just an investigator, he said. Helen's hands shook slightly as she didn't touch it. What were you then? She asked. Adrian's eyes darkened slightly. I was the one who warned Vanessa she was going to be killed. The room went silent in a way that felt unnatural. Even Ava stopped breathing for a moment. Marcus stared at him. What are you talking about? Adrian took a slow breath. The crash was meant to eliminate Vanessa, he said. Not you. Marcus's stomach twisted. That makes no sense. I was driving. Adrian nodded. That's why you survived. A beat. Then she wasn't the target you think she was protecting. Helen finally spoke, voice low. You're talking about Ava. Adrian looked at her. For years I tried to trace why Vanessa went into hiding protocols before the crash, he said. She wasn't just protecting herself. Ava stepped slightly forward from behind Marcus. Not hiding, she whispered. Adrian looked directly at her. No, he said quietly. You were being erased. Marcus felt his blood run cold. What does that mean? Adrian finally opened the envelope. Inside was a single photograph. Vanessa, smiling faintly, standing next to a much younger Ava. But the date on the photo made Marcus stagger slightly. It was taken after the official time of death. Helen covered her mouth. That's not possible. Ava suddenly took a step forward, eyes locked on the photo. I was there, she said softly. Marcus turned sharply. Ava, no, you weren't, but Adrian interrupted. She was. He looked at Marcus carefully. Vanessa didn't die in that fire the way you think. A long silence followed. Then Adrian said the words that broke everything open again. She disappeared herself, and took Ava with her. Outside, thunder rolled across the sky, and for the first time Marcus realized the truth wasn't about who died in the fire. It was about who had never actually left it. The air in the room felt thinner now, like every breath had to be earned. Marcus stared at the photograph in Adrian's hand, his mind refusing to align what he was seeing with what he knew of R. Elity, Vanessa, alive, smiling, and Ava standing beside her like nothing in the world had ever burned. That's impossible, Marcus said again, but his voice had lost its certainty. Adrian didn't argue. He simply placed the photo back into the envelope. Most of what happened that night was controlled, he said calmly. Helen's voice trembled. Controlled by who? Adrian paused. That's what Vanessa spent her last year trying to uncover. Ava stepped closer to Marcus now, no longer hiding behind him. Her small voice broke the silence. She told me to be quiet if anyone came looking. Marcus turned sharply toward her. When did she tell you that? Ava blinked slowly, as if the memory was heavy. Before the fire. Helen shook her head quickly. No, she wasn't even with you before the accident. You were. Adrian raised a hand slightly, stopping her. She's not speaking in linear time, he said. Marcus frowned. What does that even mean? Adrian looked at Ava carefully. Tell him what you saw after the fire. Ava hesitated, then spoke. The man in the black coat came into the burning car. Marcus felt his stomach drop. That's not possible. The car exploded. I saw him, Ava insisted quietly. He opened the door before it blew up. Silence. Helen looked sick. Marcus's voice cracked slightly. And Vanessa? Ava looked down. She didn't scream, to pause. She smiled at me. The room went still in a way that felt almost unreal. Adrian finally spoke again. That's because she made a decision in those seconds most people never get. Marcus shook his head, backing away slightly. No, this is insanity. She died. I buried her. Dartian nodded once. You buried what they wanted you to see, Helen whispered. Why would anyone stage her death? Adrian turned toward her. Because Vanessa wasn't just a wife, he said. She was a witness. Marcus's breath caught. A witness to what? Adrian reached into his coat again, this time pulling out a thin folder marked with faded red tape. He placed it on the desk. This case wasn't about a crash, he said quietly. It was about a program. Ava suddenly stepped forward and touched the folder. Her hand lingered, and she whispered something that made Marcus go still again. They were watching children. Helen's face drained of color. Marcus snapped. What children? Ava's. Eyes lifted slowly. Me, she said. The room tilted. Marcus felt like the floor had disappeared beneath him. Adrian nodded once, almost sadly. That's why Vanessa vanished, he said. She didn't escape the fire. A pause. She escaped what came after it. A distant siren echoed outside. Ava suddenly stepped closer to Marcus and held onto his sleeve tightly. Her voice was small again. They know I'm awake now. Marcus looked down at her, his heart pounding. Who knows? Adrian walked to the window and looked outside. Whoever sent me here, he said quietly. Then he turned back, and they're no longer watching from a distance. A long silence followed. Then the lights in the building cut out completely. The darkness didn't feel like a normal blackout. It felt intentional, like the world had been switched off in one clean motion. For a second, nobody moved. Marcus tightened his grip around Ava instinctively, pulling her close. Helen fumbled for her desk lamp, but it didn't turn on. Adrian didn't panic. That alone made Marcus more uneasy than anything else. This is not a power failure, Adrian said quietly. Ava pressed her face into Marcus's side. I don't. Tea like it, she whispered. A faint sound came from outside the office. Not a knock this time. Footsteps. Slow. Measured. Circling. Helen's voice shook. We're locked in. Marcus turned toward the door. We're not locked in. I just saw it open. It's sealed, Adrian interrupted. Marcus snapped his head toward him. What are you talking about? Adrian stepped closer to the door without touching it. The handle is physically functional, he said, but the mechanism is overridden. Helen backed away. By who? Adrian didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked at Ava and said something that made Marcus freeze. They don't want you leaving the room with her. Ava looked up sharply. I told you, she whispered. They found me. Marcus knelt slightly. Ava, listen to me. No one is going to take you anywhere. But Ava shook her head. You don't understand, she said softly. They always find me when I remember. Helen's breathing quickened. What is she remembering? Adrian finally spoke, voice low. The fragments they couldn't fully erase. A loud metallic sound echoed outside, like something scraping against the building walls. Marcus stood up instantly. Enough, I'm calling the police. He reached for his phone. No signal. He tried again. Nothing. Adrian watched him calmly. They've blocked communication, he said. Marcus stared at him. Who is they? Before Adrian could respond, the door creaked slightly, not opening, but bending, as if pressure was being applied from the other side. Helen gasped. Ava whispered, He's here. Marcus stepped in front of her again. I don't care who it is, he said firmly. They're not getting near her. The door suddenly stopped bending. Silence returned. Too sudden, too clean. Then a voice came from outside, low, distorted, but unmistakably directed at Ava. Little echo. Ava flinched violently. Marcus turned sharply. Don't listen to that. But Ava's eyes were wide now. I know that voice, she whispered. Helen grabbed the edge of the desk. That's not possible. Adrian closed his eyes briefly, then said, almost reluctantly, That's the operator. Marcus turned to him instantly. Operator of what? Adrian met his gaze. The system Vanessa exposed. A long silence followed. Then Ava spoke again, her voice trembling. She told me not to answer when he calls. Ask me that. Marcus looked down at her. Call you what? Ava's lips barely moved. Echo. The words seemed to ripple through the room like something physical. The lights flickered once, then came back dim, unstable, but enough to see the door again. It was no longer bending. It was open, just slightly, and something stood in the gap, not fully visible, but watching. Marcus stepped forward, but Ava grabbed his hand tightly and whispered something that froze him completely. That's not the man in the black coat. A pause. That's the one who sent him. The moment Ava said it, the room changed. Not emotionally. Physically, the air felt heavier, like pressure had dropped inside the walls. Marcus didn't move at first. His hand stayed locked around Ava's small fingers, but his eyes were fixed on the open doorway. Something stood there, not fully visible, just a shape cut into the dim light, too still to be human in a normal way. Too deliberate to be accidental. Helen whispered, "Close it. Close the door." But Adrian didn't move. Instead, he stepped forward one pace. "Leaving now would confirm you're unstable," he said quietly, as if speaking to the figure itself. The S shape in the doorway tilted slightly. A voice came again. Not from one direction this time, everywhere at once. "Echo is active." Ava's grip on Marcus tightened instantly. Marcus turned his head slightly toward her. "Don't listen to it." But her eyes weren't on the doorway anymore. They were unfocused, like she was somewhere else. "No," she whispered. "It's waking it again." Helen's voice cracked. "What is she talking about?" Adrian finally turned his head toward Marcus. "This is why Vanessa erased the timeline around her," he said. "Because Ava isn't just a witness." A pause. "She's a trigger." Marcus stepped back slightly. A trigger for what? The figure in the doorway shifted again, and suddenly the light stabilized for half a second, enough to reveal something new. A man. Not the black coat investigator. Not Adrian. Someone else entirely. Older. Expressionless. Holding something like a small device in his hand. He looked directly at Ava and spoke calmly. "Return the sequence." Ava flinched like the words physically hit her. Marcus moved instantly in front of her. "Don't talk to her," he snapped. "Whatever this is, it ends now." The man's gaze shifted to Marcus. "You are not P. Art of the protocol." Marcus clenched his jaw. "I don't care what protocol you think you're running. Get out." Adrian spoke sharply from behind him. "Marcus, don't escalate this." But Marcus didn't turn. "Tell me who he is." Adrian hesitated, then said quietly, "He is the original handler." Helen whispered. "Original handler of what?" The man in the doorway lifted the device slightly, and suddenly, Ava's breathing changed. Faster. Shallower. Like something inside her was reacting involuntarily. Marcus noticed immediately. Ava shook her head quickly, tears forming. "I don't want it," she whispered. "I don't want it back." The handler's voice remained calm. "It was never yours to refuse." Adrian stepped forward now, urgency breaking through his composure. "She's stabilized," he said. "You can't reintegrate her without consent protocol." The handler tilted his head slightly. "Consent was removed at inception." Marcus snapped. "Stop talking about her like she's a system." The handler looked at him. And for the first time, his expression changed, slightly annoyed. "You are emotionally attached to a residual identity," he said. "That is inefficient." Marcus's entire body tensed. "Hello?" N suddenly shouted, "Marcus, don't too late." Marcus lunged forward, not thinking, just reacting. The moment he crossed the threshold of the office, everything went white. A soundless flash. No explosion. No fire. Just a sudden absence of space. And the last thing Marcus heard before everything collapsed into silence was Ava's voice, not scared this time, but breaking. "Don't let them take me back." The world didn't return the way Marcus expected. There was no gradual sound, no slow recovery of light, just a sudden, crushing stillness, like reality had been cut and stitched back in a different place. Marcus opened his eyes. He was no longer in the office. No doorway, no Helen, no Adrian. Only a wide, empty space that looked like a warehouse stripped of time itself, grey walls, distant echoes, and a faint hum in the air, like machinery breathing. And Ava, standing a few steps away, but not alone. The man from the doorway was there too, calm, still holding that device. Marcus immediately moved toward her. "Ava." She turned toward him slowly. But something was different. Her eyes were clear, yet distant, like she was standing inside herself and watching from far away. I'm here," she whispered, but her voice didn't sound fully present. Marcus stepped closer, desperate. "Come here. We're leaving." Ava shook her head slightly. "I can't leave yet," she said. The handler spoke softly behind her. "Stability threshold reached," he said. "She is ready for reintegration." Marcus turned sharply. "Enough with your words. She's a child, not your experiment." The handler looked at him, almost tired. "Everything you've experienced since the crash is a constructed continuity," he said. "Her existence within your life was never stable." Marcus shook his head. "I buried my wife. I raised her child. That was real." A pause. Then the handler said something that made the entire space feel colder. "Vanessa Reed never died in that crash." Silence. Marcus froze. The air felt like it stopped moving. The handler continued. "She extracted Ava from the containment sequence before it finalized. The fire was a cover window." Marcus's voice cracked. "That? Doesn't make sense. Ava finally spoke again, softer. She told me you would be angry first, she said. Marcus looked at her, shaking. Ava, what are you saying? Tears formed in her eyes, but He didn't step closer. She said you loved her enough to believe what hurt you, Ava whispered. The space around them flickered slightly, like the world itself was unstable. The handler lifted the device. Final stabilization required, he said. Marcus moved forward instantly. Don't touch her. Ava suddenly raised her hand. Stop. Both men froze. Her voice changed again, still small but grounded. I remember now, she said. The air tightened. Marcus stepped forward slowly. Remember what? Ava looked at him directly. Not everything was taken from me, she said. A pause. Then she turned slightly toward the handler. And not everything belongs to you. The device in the handler's hand flickered. For the first time, uncertainty crossed his face. Marcus didn't understand any of it, but he understood one thing clearly. Ava wasn't asking for permission anymore. She was choosing. The space around them began to fracture like glass under pressure. The handler's voice sharpened. Sequence collapse is imminent. You will reset. Ava turned fully toward Marcus. And in that moment she looked exactly like herself again. Not distant, not fragmented, just a child's. Standing in the middle of something far too large for her. She walked toward Marcus, slowly, and when she reached him she took his hand. Miss Vanessa was right, she said quietly. Marcus's throat tightened. About what? Ava looked up at him. You would come back for me, she whispered. The space began breaking apart faster now, light folding, sound dissolving, everything unraveling like a memory being erased mid-thought. The handler stepped back once. For the first time he looked uncertain. Shutdown cannot be reversed, he said. Ava didn't look at him. She only looked at Marcus and squeezed his hand. I choose this, she said, and everything went white. When Marcus opened his eyes again, he was sitting on cold ground, outside, snow falling gently, the same night air, the same world. Ava was beside him, coughing softly, confused but real. Helen was there too, shaken, helping herself sit up near the wrecked car on the roadside. No warehouse, no system. No handler, just wreckage and silence. Marcus looked at Ava immediately. Are you okay? He asked, voice shaking. Ava nodded slowly, but then she looked past him, at the burning remains of the car, in the distance now fully extinguished, and whispered, I think she finally let me go. Marcus turned toward the wreckage, and for a long time, said nothing. Only the wind answered, and somewhere deep inside that silence a name felt like it was finally allowed to rest.